Durability is the most important aspect of selection prep. You can be top 5% of the selection class through gate week. You can be the strongest guy there. You can be the smartest dude there. But if your body cannot handle the stress of carrying a heavy pack day after day and moving through woods, moving over uneven terrain, then you will not go the distance. I remember there were multiple times during the star course. I'll share a funny story about the 160th as well. There were multiple times during the star course where I was like bopping around the woods in the middle of the night, pitch black, and I felt like my feet just stepped off the face of the earth. And with a 65-pound pack on my back, both feet fell into a hole, and my sternum smacked the other side of the hole, and I'm just laying there in the middle of the night, gasping for breath. And then one time I was out at we were doing the land nav course for the 160th, and I was going through the woods trying to run to this point, and again fell off the face of the earth into a trench. And then after me, another guy like 10 yards down fell into the same trench, and it just ate up like 4 or 5 of us. So that stuff is 100% going to happen to everybody here. Anybody that goes up to land nav, you're going to fall on your ass. You're going to fall face first. You're going to dive through the briars. You're going to be jumping over ditches with a pack on your back. You're going to be doing all of this stuff. And durability means the ability to withstand those stressors. A lot of them, like Tyler said, random, and not have an acute injury like you blow an Achilles, you pull a hamstring, you blow out your back. Those are obviously situations that are going to put your selection odds at risk. So we want to build up that durability. And then I would also add durability in the endurance sense is being able to show up day after day. You just rucked a 12-mile ruck the day prior, and now you have to go run a 5-mile run or do the nasty nick, and you can go out there and actually perform, and you're not completely broken or have a bunch of overuse injuries. So being durable doesn't mean you're not going to be without pain. It's not like, anybody is ever going to go to selection and you show up the next day after a heavy ruck with zero soreness or zero pain, but it means that you're not in such debilitating pain that you cannot go out and perform. So Tyler, what are some things that guys either do or don't do that hurts their durability for courses like selection?
The one thing that comes to mind to me is patience, and that's patience in the process. So, just understanding the timeline of continuous training it takes to make you become durable. And then also patience in the process of, like your example you just gave. I need to ruck 12 miles and then go for a 5 mile run. Guys are, maybe the word is insecure or just very impatient, and they think that to make themselves more durable, they need to do exactly what you just said and see if they're capable. And capability and durability are related, but they're not the exact same thing. So you build durability, and through that process, you become capable.
Hmm.
Not, let me see what I can do, and then I'll make the decision if I'm durable or not.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we need reminders of this. I talk to Tyler all the time, but I've been playing baseball lately, and I've been trying to get my arm ready to throw a baseball. I'm freaking old now, and my arm's nice and creaky. And I used to be able to go out there and just sling it day after day and feel great. Now I throw and I have to wait a couple days. And for me, the biggest thing that I have been focusing on is being able to get the right amount of stimulus and then provide the right amount of recoverability. And through that kind of stair step process, we build that durability. So you have to be patient with getting the stimulus on our system, deploying that stress, and then pulling back and letting our body actually adapt to the training. Another thing that I would add for what guys don't do that hurts their durability is not getting enough sleep or not getting, well, sleep is one of them, but not getting enough nutrition to support their training. We talk about it all the time, and some of you guys might have experienced this when you came in the program and we loaded up your meal plan and you're like, dude, how do I eat all this freaking food? Like, I don't know how I'm going to eat it. Like if you are running a selection prep program, 20, 25, 30 miles a week, rucking on top of it, a couple lifting sessions, all of that stuff, like you have to eat a substantial amount of food to actually support the training. And if guys are constantly under fueled, guys aren't resting because they're staying up till midnight playing video games, all of that stuff, that's going to prolong that time that we talked about that it takes to get back from baseline and actually make the adaptations from the stress that we impose. So if we want to be durable, we got to eat, we got to sleep, and we got to be patient. Other than that, Tyler, what are some things that we do inside of the training session, so the fun stuff that builds the durability for guys going to selection?
I think it starts right in the warm up. And I know that was a big education piece with you as well when I visited you.
Oh,
Is that
100%.
yeah, understanding that you're just not prepping your body for exercise. You're exploring positions and being cognitive of those positions and seeing where your end range lies today and where you could take it maybe tomorrow. Not being afraid of getting on the ball of your foot and driving your knee down to the ground because you're just dealing with yourself and gravity. So it's that chance to kind of explore positions, um, be kind of aggressive in some new positions, and just see what your body's capable of. So that, you know, when you fall and you drive your knee towards the ground, you're like, oh, I've seen this position before. Your body is somewhat capable to handle what's going on.
Yeah. And for some of you guys who are in the OLP, I see a couple of you guys in here. Welcome in, by the way. Uh, you are going to likely experience this. One of the biggest things that Tyler emphasized with me when he came out here is thoracic rotation and spinal extension. And mine was pretty freaking terrible. And when I first started
So
doing like wall walkovers, I literally have the video that we did inside of the gym. It's like ready to post to YouTube, and I haven't posted yet because my wall walkovers were so embarrassing. But even after like 5, 6 weeks of consistently getting that exposure, I'm like 50%, 60% improved in that range of motion. And that range of motion or access to that ability to move my body through that is increasing my overall durability. Because then if I have to move that in that particular way, there's not going to be this big stress point that ends up being the point of failure and creating one of those injuries. And then I would also add some of the things that we emphasize huge inside of this community is not ego lifting and not trying to just put a bunch of weight on the bar and have shitty form and then end up developing injuries with it. Biggest thing with that is that we see is deadlift and squat. Those are big movements that we can add substantial amount of weight to it. But if you are not moving with quality form or you're having a form breakdown, those are also the biggest movements where you're going to experience those injuries. So for guys going to selection, understand that strength matters, but it's strength through that full range of motion and the proper technique. It's not just putting weight on the bar. We want to get the right stimulus, want to be patient with it. And once that form is solid and we are feeling good with those reps and not going to failure and having that form breakdown, then we progress up in weight. So as you guys are going throughout the program, keep that in the back of your mind. And as we always say, the gym is the place to enhance our performance outside of it. It is not the main event. You're not going to be tested on the bench, squat, or deadlift at selection. It's just there to support us overall. Anything you want to add to that one, Tyler?
yeah, with the lifts, once you get a little bit senior, or you've been practicing them for more than 12 weeks, there's like a continuum that you could think about or at least write down. And number one is control. So, how you control the squat off the rack. Once you have control, then you work on your depth. And then after depth comes speed. So, that all takes place before then load. So most guys are like, okay, I can do it. Let's put more weight on it. But hey, man, like, how did it look?
Yeah.
Did you control it? Could you be in that position for like 6 seconds if I told you to freeze at any point? Yep, yep, yep. Okay, load it up. Go to the next warm up set.
Yeah. And don't pay attention to other people in the gym. I feel like a lot of times we go in with a plan, like, I'm just going to take it easy and move nice and smooth today. And then there's like, people looking at us, or we think people are judging us in our 135 on the bar, and they're like, screw that. I'm putting 275 and going to crush it. So don't fall into that. And then to wrap this up, guys, warm ups are not just to prime you for the session. And got it one in here. I'm shocked at the warm up took me 40 minutes. The warm up should not be taking you 40 minutes, even with the longest warm ups that we have in here. I'll have to look for your specific program, but you might have some rehab stuff in there. But the longest warm ups that we have in here should take no more than 20 minutes. It does take a little bit to, like you said, look at the videos potentially and learn that specific movement. But once you got that down, we are moving fast through that warm up. We're not like lollygagging and taking rest sets between, exercises. We are moving with intention through that warm up and getting to the session. And then
And
last thing, go ahead.
a lot of it is that's the price of tuition, man. To take care of your body, to learn how to sustain your career like for years, that's just the price of tuition up front. It might take 30 minutes, which turns to 25 week 2, which turns to 20 minutes week 3, and by your first month you're at 15 minutes, and it's just kind of you memorizing the sequence and the shapes.
Yeah, exactly. And then last thing I'll leave you guys with is the whatever it takes mindset. A lot of times we'll get guys in here that are like highly motivated. I'm going to be a Green Beret. I'm going to be a freaking SEAL. I'm going to be a Air Force Special Warfare operator or Air Force Special Operations guy. And they're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And they view that as I'm going to go out there and crush myself every day and increase the intensity until I can no longer push. No, the whatever it takes mindset is discipline and adhering to the actual training that we are imposing for you. It's not just going out there and trying to crush yourself as much as you can. It is being disciplined, pushing when it's time to push, pulling back when it's time to pull back, keeping the easy runs easy, and then getting those hard runs hard. So I challenge you guys to change the mindset, not just to pushing constantly, but to adhering to the plan and the protocol that is in there for you. All right, got a couple questions. First one is from Michael: can a Zercher squat be a decent substitute for a front squat? And I actually love the Zercher squat, especially for that last phase going into selection for the sandbag lift, and then obviously getting the weight off the spine. But can you talk about the difference between the Zercher and the front squat in regard to the stress it's putting on the system?
Yeah. So mainly it's just the load angle. So when you're holding a Zercher squat, it's not going to be super axial or spinal loaded. And the barbell is just going to be a little bit front of your center of gravity. So in order to obtain this squat, you have to be a little bit over your center of gravity. What does that mean? Your spinal erectors are going to be challenged a little bit more in this lift versus a front squat. In the front squat, there's much more of that vertical demand on the torso, placing way more emphasis on range of motion of the knee and ankle, but also the prime knee extensors, aka the quads. The front squat's going to develop your quads much, I wouldn't say much faster, but in a faster rate than the Zercher would. But the Zercher will test your durability of the spinal erectors a little bit more than the front squat.
Love it. Love it. And kind of like what we talked about last week with the how we introduce heavier weighted rucks to propagate the nervous system. During those times, we talked about reducing the spinal loading, and the front squat and the Zercher squat are both good ways to build strength in that movement pattern while not directly loading that spine. All right. So we're going to dive into some questions, guys. They're going to be strength training related. But if you guys have any questions, we will make sure to cover those. First one, Bridger said, Mike Glover shared a funny story of when he saw a guy who had been a prior ranger get whacked in the back of the head by a log. He said he almost started crying, then caught himself and shook it off. I feel like that's a pretty good skill. Stuff hurts sometimes, but you can only choose to move on from pain if your body has the ability built in. Yes, 100% your body having the ability to built in, but like in a sense like that, you also have to have that mental strength aspect. Like when, God, man, I wish you guys could experience a draw just like for an hour. But you guys are going to go through some of the nastiest freaking draws in the country out there at Fort Bragg, and every step you take is going to be a briar ripping your skin and poking through your uniform and grabbing onto you. Like it takes a lot of mental toughness to continue to drive through that. When you get done with selection, you're gonna have cuts all over your hand. Your hands are gonna be like black. You're gonna have cuts all over your legs from walking through the woods. Like it is not just like a leisurely walk through the woods. There has to be that mental toughness aspect. And I think that story summarizes it pretty well. You got to shake those things off. All right. You ever tried pressing with a cambered barbell? Absolutely crazy pec stretch that can be really nice while trying to focus on pec hypertrophy. I have not actually. I did see Mike Israetel pressing with the cambered barbell, but I have never actually done it myself. What do you think about that?
I've done it with a cambered barbell. I've done it with Kabuki Strength made what's called a Cadillac barbell. I bought like 8 of those for the 2-3. They're fantastic. They do an incredible job of putting your shoulder and elbows in a proper position. So if you like walk into a Major League Baseball strength and conditioning facility, most of the benches that they press with are angled. There's not a lot of straight bar benching. Um, I know that's
Cadillac barbell?
it's called the Cadillac bar by Kabuki Strength. It is a standard in special operations, or at least it was for me in my weight rooms.
Not in
We
ours, but
love
that's
them
pretty
things.
sweet. Yeah, it looks
Oh
nice.
yeah.
Get
Yep.
a lot of different hand positions in it.
It really puts the shoulder in a good position, and that's the money maker for limiting elbow spurs for older guys, putting them in a good position. It's kind of like when I'm teaching somebody with dips and I can just see it's not happening. Like their scapula's elevating. It just looks wonky. They can't get the range of motion. So I just tell them, hey, turn your body around. And now because it's wider, it's going to be way more pec stretch because the shoulder's coming in. The elbow's going to be back on a 45. So that cambered experience is the same. Like you're getting such a huge stretch in your pecs that you're like, whoa. And you leave without any elbow pain, which is the
Hmm.
best.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna have to try it. My gym doesn't have any of those, but once I get access to one, I'll check it out. Then he also asked, "Are we getting any new Infinite Grit merch soon?" Um, on the horizon. I just redid the website, but we are building out the logistics on the back end because I was sending everything out myself, and it was just way too much to handle coaching, and I was felt like I was not putting my focus where I needed to. So I just got rid of it for now, and then we'll reintroduce it once we get it built out. So yes, but probably going to be a couple months right now. We're just using the merch for the guys that win the challenge. I think that's what took me so long. I was watching the videos to make sure I was doing it correctly. Now, yeah, for sure. And 100% when you start getting used to the new movements, it will take a little bit longer. Going back to the durability piece too, is I challenge you guys to think about learning these new movements, not just as like getting the muscular stimulus or stressing this particular muscle, but teaching our body to understand where it is in space. There's a word called proprioception, which is just understanding where your body is in space and under in being able to move it efficiently and know how to control it. When we learn new movements, even mobility, lifts, anything like that, ATG split squat, anytime there's a new movement introduced and we focus on doing it with proper technique and we slow down and take the time, that is building that proprioception or that ability to understand where our body is in space. And that has a direct translation to durability when we fall and we have to catch ourselves sporadically. 100% me. I work out at the gym on base. Either a pretty girl and or a GB starts working out next to me, and now it's a PR day. Yep, been there, dude. Been there. Uh, all right. Speaking of getting looked at in the gym, I hate it when I lock eyes with someone when doing pogo jumps. No matter what, I always feel so goofy doing them. Yeah, dude, same actually. There's some movements where I just feel uh weird doing them, but I know they're beneficial for me. So understand like I've seen a couple videos where it's like someone doing something crazy in the gym, and then it like cuts to what they actually do, and they're like an Olympic bobsledder or something like that. Your goals, if you're training for selection and doing endurance work, are way freaking different than anybody else's goals inside of a commercial gym. So like 99% of the population is just trying to be fit, go lift weight, and feel good and look good naked, right? But if you're training for performance, you are occasionally going to have to do things that is outside of the norm, and it can feel a little bit different when you lock eyes with someone and you're doing pogo jumps. So absolutely agree, but we just got to push through that. I do have a question. What are some tips to get better quality sleep? Tyler, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, so the easy one that you can do off the bat is just limiting your cell phone time or blue light time. You can do that by purchasing some blue light glasses, by taking the brightness of your phone and cranking it down as the evening continues. Sleeping with your cell phone in not your bedroom. So maybe you charge it in a bathroom that's nearby. Maybe you put it in a completely different room is a huge one. Also, manipulating your feeding windows could have a drastic impact on your sleep quality. For some people, they're sensitive to digestion. So, eating super dense whole foods about an hour or 2 hours right before bed can be kind of conducive to the quality of sleep, just because of all of that taking place, is taking blood away from the brain and other areas to repair. Another one to consider is distracting your brain, and reading is a huge one for this. Reading paperback books is gold if you're someone that is super obsessed with like tangibles. So you're the micromanager, the type A personality. Sometimes getting your head into a book can kind of offset all the noise and focus to where it's actually a little bit calming for you just to put that nervous system in a proper place before, you know, turning the lights off, so to speak.
Yeah.
Hydration is huge. The intake of sodium up to zero point 0.5, so like half a gram up to an entire gram of salt about an hour before bed can increase quality of sleep tremendously. I know there's some studies right off of Element's website that you can look at when it comes to sleep. So electrolytes and hydration play a huge role as well.
Yeah, and I would say something cool I learned about the phone that I think about whenever I wake up in the middle of the night. One, keep your phone out of your room, but two, also if you wake up and you go take a piss or you got a kid that's screaming and you got to go put her down or whatever, like the worst thing you can do for your sleep is to go just check on your phone. I'm just going to see what's going on. Two things happens. One, you get the blue light, which obviously suppresses your melatonin and wakes your system up. You start tricking your mind that it's time to get up for the day. And two, this is something that I think about all the time, is the Zeigarnik effect. I don't know if I said that word right, but this is a theory or kind of a thing that an idea that talks about an open loop. So if you open a loop for some type of information, a task, something that needs to take place in the future, without closing it, your brain naturally thinks and starts stressing about that. And I have been guilty of this so many times. There's so many times that I, in the past, have checked my phone in the middle of the night, and it's like one of you guys sent me a message, or something's going on. One of the guys, one of the coaches sent me a message, and I'm like, oh, I got to take care of this. And now I'm thinking about that and stressing about it. I open that loop, and it's much harder to get back to sleep. So, damn sure never check your phone in the middle of the night if you wake up. Zach, when it comes to SFAS, is it completed in a humid area? I've been running up in PA with it being 20 outside, down south a little, and did my 2 runs with it being 75 with humidity. Felt like I was dying. 100%, it's going to be humid. It takes a little bit of time for your body to adapt to it. I'm a West Coast guy. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. Spent a lot of time in Arizona and dry, humid or dry climates, and then went out east to go to selection and all that. And I was like, dude, this is a different beast, but you do get used to it relatively quickly, a lot quicker than you get used to the elevation, in my experience. So, yes, it is humid, but you will get used to it. Riley said the draws suck. Took me 90 minutes to move a kilometer in a draw earlier this week. And I don't know if anybody in here follows Riley on Instagram, but he posted a story walking through the draws out there in freaking waist high water, just getting after it in some land nav. So, yes, it is absolutely nasty out there. And one thing I liked about that video, Riley, is it looked like it was just waist high the entire way. And then you started walking and you immediately sunk down to your chest. Like the water is so dark and murky, and it looks the same depth all the way across that you do got to be careful walking in those different areas. How was that
Yeah, it
experience out
was it
there?
was terrible. Do not go through a draw. Just do whatever you can to avoid it.
Yeah, even if like when you guys are planning your routes for land nav, even if you're like, oh my gosh, I got to go 6 kilometers, and if I just go through this draw, it's only going to be a 6 kilometer movement. But if I go around this draw, it's going to be 8.5, 9 kilometers. So I'm just going to go through the draw. Well, personally, I would probably rather go a couple 2, 3K to go around a draw, and I'd probably save more time than trying to bust one of those, especially if it's a big one like Bones Fork. So keep that in mind when you guys are planning your routes out there. That's going to be me at SFBC in 2 weeks, busting all the draws. You got to link up with Riley, man. He's going to be out there too. Got a good crew going out to SFBC this class. I got a question for the box squat. Most of the time, all the boxes are being used by other people. Is it okay to use a bench when there's no boxes available? Yes. And Tyler, do you want to touch on what we're looking for, what we're looking to achieve with the box squat?
Yeah. So the box squat does a couple of things for us. One, it gives us a target of depth. So usually in the beginning phases of training, you might be a little bit unaware of where your hips are in space in relation to the knee. So as long as you're getting close to that 90 degree, it could be a little bit above, it could be right at, or a little bit below, anywhere in that range is acceptable. It also takes a little bit of demand off of the knee joint at that end range because there can be that little touch, which is a little bit of disconnect of pushing. So it can help take some pressure off the back and a little bit off the front side knee. So in again in those beginning phases, or if you're dealing with an injury of the lower leg, it's a great exercise to use. But yeah, don't get super caught up on the depth. You don't have to be super nitpicky. You just want to squat well, hit your positions well, and stand up fast.
Solid. Michael said, also speaking, diving face first into a ditch. I love the opening to that. Once, when I was a diver on tanks, I dove us 20 miles per hour into a 10-foot creek. I cracked my gunner's ribs, knocked all the air out of my lieutenant, and all I got was a bruised knee. LOL, my NCO was too hurt to smoke me, though. Dude, that is gnarly. That is,
Yeah.
that sounds terrible. I'm glad you only got a bruised knee, though. And the NCO probably got some disability out of that. He's like, dude, I'm chilling. I don't need to smoke you anymore. Arthur, can I do only um can I only do dumbbell bench press instead of barbell bench press? Dumbbell bench press is more accessible to me at the gym I currently go to, but just wondering if you guys prefer I do barbell bench press if it is assigned. Tyler said, yes, dumbbell bench press can work. Absolutely can work. In my experience, um, with the dumbbell bench press, you're not going to be able to load it as much as you would with a barbell down the road, like when you get to those more advanced levels. But for our purposes and what we're training for, dumbbell bench press is going to be more than sufficient to stimulate that muscle fiber and build the strength that's going to translate over to that horizontal pressing strength. CJ, for example, Coach CJ, he only does dumbbell bench press. He's a freaking beast with it. Like when he came to Arizona, he's like walked over to the rack, grabbed the 130s, and just started repping them out. I'm like, okay, this guy's different. Um, but and then when we flat benched on the barbell, he was like repping 225 on the incline. So he's very strong just from doing dumbbell bench press, and it will absolutely transfer over to barbell and just that horizontal pressing strength in general. Question: what's a good substitute for the sandbag over the shoulder exercise? I personally don't have a sandbag and don't think my gym has either. Dumbbell clean and press. Solid, solid. Um, oh, I've seen people use their green duffel filled with sand from Home Depot or tire chips. Yeah, the green duffel for sandbags is going to be solid. There's a guy on Instagram I went to the Q course with actually that did a video talking about how he builds sandbags using the green duffel bag and some mulch and sand. So good to do and good to have if you guys have one laying around or available, because that is also what you're going to be tested on during the CRA portion of selection. So you do gate week, and then you do nasty Nick, and then you do the CRA, which is that round robin combat readiness assessment. And there is a go no go test of being able to pick up and carry a 175-pound green duffel bag. So it is a good thing to practice with that. And if you have the availability to use sandbags, actually, then I recommend it. You can also use your ruck. Something I've recently heard recently in the running community is that the actual zone you're in doesn't matter, especially if you aren't an elite athlete. And the way you feel is what actually matters, whether it feels easy, hard, or brutal. Do you guys agree with this? Yes and no. So I agree with not going down the rabbit hole of like my heart rate has to be freaking 148. Like what matters more is that physiological marker. Am I able to nasal breathe? Does this generally feel easy? Do I have a wide aperture? I'm not like tunnel vision on this run like I am on those speed sessions. If those are all true, then you are most likely in an aerobic state. The goal and the reason why we often use heart rate is it ensures that we're below that max aerobic threshold. And we are primarily utilizing our oxidative system. What that does is it makes us more efficient at pulling from those fat stores for energy. For reference for you guys, we have two main sources of energy for these runs, like runs, rucks, endurance movements. First is glycogen, and our body stores about 2,000 calories worth of energy in glycogen. Um, and then we have our fat stores. And even for a relatively lean 180-pound athlete, we can store up to 100,000 calories worth of energy in our fat stores. So if we stay and keep those runs easy enough to build our ability to turn those fat stores into energy during that run, then we access so much more that we can apply to when we get out to selection. So, is zone two going to be the thing that drives down your 2 mile time? Not in the immediate short term. Is going to drive down those 2 mile times is your speed sessions and your tempo runs, those harder efforts. But that zone two runs are doing two things: getting the impact resistance and then getting that stimulus on our aerobic system. So when we are 5, 6 days into a movement, when we're out at land nav, when we're out at team week, we are pulling and we're very efficient at pulling from that fat stores instead of zapping our glycogen right away and then being bonking and wondering why we can't keep up. So I hope that answers it. Sorry for the rant. I saw someone doing the warm ups we do. No way some random person is doing that. So I asked him what he was training for. He said rasp with John. Thought that was cool. Great seeing people. I have local people I have seeing. I have people local in the program. That's awesome, man. That's freaking cool. If you got his name, drop it for me. I won't call it out on here, but that's awesome. For sleep, I use Fit Sleep. It's like a watch that vibrates you awake. Works amazingly for sure. That's cool. I use Whoop, and it does kind of the same thing. You can like set it to a latest time to wake up. Like I need to wake up no later than this time. But it can like wake you up in a window between those sleep cycles because we obviously have the sleep cycles where we go through REM, we go through the deep sleep, and then we come out of it, and they last about an hour and a half each. So if we can wake up between those, we're usually less groggy and we can kind of wake up a little bit easier. That's probably why you guys have probably experienced where you sleep, you get really good sleep, you wake up in the morning, you feel pretty good, but then you're like, nah, snooze. And then you go back to sleep for 45 minutes and you wake up feeling worse than you did 45 minutes earlier. It's probably because you went back into that sleep cycle. You were in REM or that deep sleep stage of the sleep cycle, and then you woke up from that and you're going to feel a little bit more groggy. Dr. Huberman Essentials series is great to get some info on getting better sleep and being more alert when awake. Highly recommend checking his stuff out. Yes, highly recommend checking Dr. Huberman out as well. Everyone follow my recruiting Instagram for my SFAS workout journey if you want. Ranger Rod, RANGERROD _. Check them out, guys. NC North Carolina humidity is something else. All right, a tip on reading before sleep. Read sitting on the end of your bed or a chair next to it. When you read laying down, you can get sleepy, but you condition your body to associate that spot and position with reading. Interesting.
I know about that. Yeah.
I did not know about that. Can you
Oh
elaborate on
yeah.
that?
Oh yeah. So
Oh, you
I don't
got
know where I
it.
picked it. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I've always been a lifelong reader and everything, so I was obsessed with reading in bed, like all through high school and stuff, and I found that I just couldn't get myself to sleep. And then I found some article saying that whatever you're doing in a location or position your body starts to associate it with that. So instead of saying like, all right, bedtime, your body says like, oh, it's reading time, time to bust out your favorite sci-fi novel or whatever. And so instead of getting quality sleep, I was lying awake waiting for my reading time, or I was reading really late and then having crazy dreams about sci-fi battles, which also messes with your sleep too. So
But it's cool.
it's very cool. It's very cool.
I have not heard of that. I'm going to start practicing it because I read straight in bed. My wife is she's like in her wellness era. So I went in the room the other night and I just like clicked on the light and we have a red light in our room now. Definitely helps kind of wind down and not have that blue light exposure. But I'm gonna try that. Robert said, I have a GoRuck 65 pounds that I use daily since I'm a recruiter. I'm used to the weight room for Ranger School and being in a light unit. Would you guys recommend not using or keep using it? Tyler, you want to touch on using the 65-pound GoRuck bag daily?
So for rucking with it daily,
Yes.
I would just feel
So,
like, go ahead.
so what I do, I usually walk 3 miles a day, right? Because I walk to my car, I park, walk to my job, walk around, and whatnot. As a recruiter, obviously you have to prospect, try to get people into the army. But with that being said, I just have that on at all times so I could get my ankles used to it since I've been off the line for like almost more than a year. You know what I mean? So I was just wondering, should I keep using it or should I not keep using it for like future injuries?
Yeah. So I would say a couple of things. One, I'd be interested in how long you've been doing that with that type of load. Um, to kind of find some like even marriage, I would say if you're going to continue doing it, maybe just do it with like 25 to 35 pounds. But if you want the ultimate answer, maybe a couple of times a week to eventually zero. And that just has to do with the amount of load that's being placed on your spine during the process of the type of training that we do. Now, if it's something that you've been doing for months and months and months, you're extremely accommodated to it, then maybe, yeah, if I just throw you in a 25-pound ruck and you're walking around doing your dailies, that's fine. It might even help you with recruiting, like you said. So I don't want to just truly take that away from you and just be like, no, don't do it. But um, there could be some energy that you're sparing there to do what you want that's taking away from what we could be applying that decreases runtime, increases some strength. So there's always a trade-off to things. But I don't think what you're doing is necessarily bad.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up is like, um, I agree it's not necessarily bad. I would ask how you feel with it generally. But a lot of times when guys do this and when guys do like zone two runs every single day or start trying to like do something every day, is they develop a lot of global fatigue. And even though they might not notice it, their performance on those speed sessions, their performance on those tempo runs is a little bit undermined or, not as good as it could have been. So you're not going to get as much out of those high quality sessions as you would otherwise. So food for thought. All right. Um, all right. Having to go into the Army as an 11X, any advice or wisdom regarding volunteering for selection at OSIT?
Oh, can I say something on that?
Yes, I was gonna ask. Yes, please.
All right. So for volunteering for selection at OSET, you basically got to be a PT stud. They look at your your PT test during OSET. So with that being said, just keep grinding it, bro, and you got this.
Heck yeah. And we have another guy there too right now in the same situation. We're waiting to see if he picks up the contract throughout it. So Yeah, definitely just freaking keep grinding. Be a leader amongst the guys that you're with. Be positive, and you'll usually get opportunities like that based on your performance. Silly question. Will we see any prep for the duffel carry, or does the carry circuits prepare us for it? So you'll see a lot of like front rack carries or Zercher sandbag carries. Those are preparing you for that heavy carry, because what you're usually going to do is Zercher that thing up. So you lift it so it gets on your knees, you get your arms underneath it, you Zercher the sandbag up to your shoulder, or front rack carry usually to your shoulder, and then you kind of fireman carry it with that. It's only like 100 meters. It's not like a super crazy thing, but it's just a pass fail that they have in there. Anytime we cut out cable during projects at work and fill the 55-gallon bag, I take that chance to throw it over my shoulder. It's a good little exercise. Love it. Love it. Speaking of box squats, do you want to actually sit down on the box or just bounce off of it? Normally, I sit down, give myself like 2 to 3 seconds, then stand up. Tyler, you want to cover that?
Yeah, Dan. So the box squat can be used in like 3 different ways, but I'm going to give 2 different ways for an example for you. As long as you're keeping tension, that's the main focus. Now, if somebody has some type of injury, I do what's called a sit and rock box squat. So you come down to the box, you actually sit back a little bit to where your spine becomes completely upright, and then you rock into the squat and stand up quickly. In your case, you would just be trying to mimic the same position as if the box wasn't there. So keeping the same torso angle, the same knee angle, holding tension while your butt is on the box, and then shooting right up from there. So the main thing that I'm trying to say is as long as you're not slouching or relaxing on that box, you're good to go.
Yeah. Next question. My sandbag only goes to 125 pounds. Is that enough to train for the sandbag carries at selection? Yes. And like combined with an actual lift where you're propagating your system and building up the strength. But if you only have 125 pound sandbag, we got to work with what we got. We can obviously, see if a gym has a heavier one, maybe load it up with more sand, whatever. But if that's what we got to work with it. What you can work is the actual technique. So essentially deadlifting it up so it gets just above your knees, setting it on your knees, zerchering. So you squat down, get your arms underneath it, and then throw it up to your shoulder. If you can work on that technique and get it down, doesn't matter if you use a 150, 175, 200-pound sandbag. That combined with propagating our system and getting that strength development with those big lifts will put you in a solid position to not have any issues with that. And nobody, like, we haven't seen anyone have issues with the sandbag carry, but it does exist. So I want to make sure you guys are aware of it. Can you buy a duffel type bag that comes with removable sandbags from Amazon? There's one that is 150 to 200 pounds. Yeah, absolutely, man. Amazon specials are fantastic. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And if it's slightly awkward, maybe that's even better, right? So if it's not perfect to what you're going to be using, but it's still allowing you to get that load and work that technique, it's going to be sufficient. It's going to be fine. What would you recommend packing a ruck with if you're a civilian and don't have all the gear that most people use? Um, I would say still a sleeping bag. I don't know if you have a sleeping bag, but most of us should have a sleeping bag. If you don't, go get a cheap sleeping bag. Fill that thing on the bottom. And then I obviously don't like use military equipment anymore, but I'll still have like a bag full of like warm weather or cold weather clothes. So a jacket, maybe a blanket, something that's going to keep me warm if I have to go out into an environment and stay there for a period of time. So I would say sleeping bag, maybe some shoes, socks, whatever on the side, get that little shelf, and then a wet weather bag. You can buy a civilian one that like rolls up and kind of clips so it's nice and waterproof. Fill that up with a bunch of clothes, jackets, sweaters, whatever you can have on hand. Put that on top of that. And then on top of the wet weather bag full of your clothes is where you can have your peanut and your more heavily weighted items towards the top and close to your shoulder blades. For farmers carries, is there an ideal weight we should be hitting before selection, or is it just getting a lot of endurance with the weight? The ideal weight, and this is put out by SFAS, I think it's a little bit low, but they say 55 pounds for 200 feet. That's not very much. Most of you guys, if not all of you guys in here, could carry 55 pounds for 200 feet. But it's a good place to start. So I would say there, and then we want to build up. A lot of guys are carrying 70, 73-pound kettlebells for 100 meters, etc. Tyler, you want to add on that at all?
No, as soon as you asked that question, like literally 75 pounds lit up in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah. 75 pounds is a good place to be with farmer carries. I've heard getting to the Q course, it gets harder. And then getting to an ODA, it gets even harder. Is there truth to this? Yes, there's absolutely truth to it, but the hard changes, the type of hard changes. I would say, in my experience, SUT was the hardest part of the entire pipeline, including selection. Like, I would rather do selection again versus another round of SUT. It's longer, you're sleep deprived, the weights are heavier, and you're just doing that endlessly. So I would say that's really tough. The infill to Robin Sage was one of the hardest movements I've ever done in my entire life. I had a 130-pound rucksack on my back, and we walked for 12 hours straight that night after infilling. So that was probably the worst movement I've ever done. But I remember getting to Afghanistan and we were doing an offset infill, and I was carrying the 240 with 700 rounds of 7.62 in my bag with my kit on and everything. So it was pretty freaking similar weight, and it was hot as shit, and I was just drenched in sweat immediately after we got off the bird. So that was pretty freaking tough too. It will continue getting tougher. There will be times where it's very challenging like that, but you might have some missions where you're chilling in the embassy wearing a suit. So it's hard to say like if it's always going to be that tough, but the potential for it being more challenging than what you experience inside the pipeline is absolutely there. Never going to get easy. I'll say that. Is there a reason you don't just put bricks and or weights in the bag for a ruck? You absolutely can. You can put a brick or something in there. The thing that I would say is exactly what Bridger touched on: load distribution. If you're just putting it in the bottom of your ruck, you're going to be pulling yourself back, putting a lot of tension on your hip flexors, getting you out of position, being very inefficient with your movement, and it's going to cause a bunch of issues. A lot of times guys will use like dumbbells, but then the dumbbells shift their way down inside the ruck and end up causing the same issue. So there's nothing wrong with using that stuff, but you just got to make sure you pack the ruck in a manner that allows you to secure that weight at the point that you want to hold it at. All right. Question for you, Tyler. Where do muscle imbalances come from, and how can I minimize them? I would say for most guys on team or tactical athletes in general.
Okay, so we'll start off with a knowledge bomb. You're always going to have muscular imbalances because there is no such thing as symmetry in the human body. You were born right or left-handed. You have a dominant plant foot, a power foot. It's just kind of how it's set up. We've just been kind of duped to think that we could get things completely symmetrical. Now, to answer your question, usually what we find is that the number one thing that advances performance in an endeavor is specificity of practice. But that's also the number one mode of injury or asymmetry is specificity of practice in a particular skill. Because depending on what that skill is, throwing a baseball, rucking, uh, playing pool, all of that has to do with a compensation to create performance in the endeavor. So your body has compensatory accesses that it needs to uh, negotiate and work with other parts of the body in order for that skill to not only flourish but to withstand. So, how can we work to create a little bit more symmetry, so to speak? Well, we can start dissecting the sport itself or the movement itself. So, if our sport is, let's just say, military, we know that we're an anterior dominant loaded sport. So most of everything that we do is going to happen in the frontal plane, and all of our primary movers are going to be on the front side of the body. That's the way you when you ruck, you have that forward lean. When you're shooting, you have that forward lean. Everything happens anteriorly. And as a byproduct of that, the posterior chain needs to be strengthened to endure the performance that's happening. So we can go into the weight room and just keep loading anterior, 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 and our performance is going to get even better at military, but we're just not going to last very long. So you have to find out what are the prime movers of whatever that asymmetry is occurring and find out, hey, I need to boost my performance, yes, but in order to be durable, like we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, I need to strengthen up the support cast.
Yeah. I actually recorded the YouTube video on this today, so it's top of mind. But I was looking at my career and some of the injuries I had, and a lot of it was because I was so focused in performance in this plane, so focused in
Mm-hmm.
just doing the thing. And there were times where I wasn't getting, the right posterior chain stimulus. I wasn't getting the right glute stimulus. I wasn't activating the right muscles. I was creating a lot of tension in my hips that wasn't allowing me to activate the right muscle group. So all of those things. So lifting through full range of motion, mobility work, again, like we talked about, joint prep are all things that we can do to set ourselves up to prolong our career and not have to deal with a lot of those injuries associated with those, I would say, massive imbalances that get created. All right. Next one is we talked about bench pressing, and I wanted to come back to this. And you said bone spurs or elbow issues that guys experience. If guys are experiencing some elbow pains, what are some things that they can do to relieve that?
Okay. So whenever you're thinking about the leg or the arm, we'll just focus on the arm since it's an elbow question. You need to think about a whip like Indiana Jones. And the tail end of the whip, you would think of the last joint in your arm would be the wrist. If you come back a little bit further into the whip, you have the elbow, and then you have the shoulder, as in like the very first part of the whip. So usually anything along the whip line, as an elbow or wrist, is always a shoulder problem. So the first place that I would always look is the shoulder, primarily the posterior, and then secondary to that, the anterior shoulder. Because usually most of your anterior shoulder problems are a posterior shoulder problem. The first thing I would do, it was I would test tissue quality. I'd get a lacrosse ball back there, and if immediately you're like, "Oh gosh, tissue quality is not proper," you need to start working on that. So you're going to need to get in there and do some trigger point work. That does not mean foam rolling. It just means putting a ball back there, sitting and relaxing, working on your breathing, understanding the anatomy of the shoulder is one of the best byproducts of trigger pointing your shoulder. You start to actually understand what the heck is back there, and you might learn a whole lot of stuff is back there. Some things you might not even have known depending on the angle. So once you've moved to the back of the shoulder, then you can lay on the side of your shoulder and start to understand how much the lat influence the shoulder. Then you can go to the front of the shoulder and understand how much the pec influence the shoulder. So sometimes I know it's just like crazy the way I'm talking. Sometimes your elbow pain is a tissue problem with your chest from so much freaking push-ups we do, or instability in the shoulder because you're doing pull-ups all the way wrong. And then because you like to bench press and you're good at it, you think it's your elbow or your triceps, but really the culprit is much deeper than that. So, by exploring your shoulder, you can start to learn and understand these basic concepts. Now, to directly affect your shoulder and to just get that sucker out of pain, you move closer to the joint. You want to move above and below that joint. So you might want to start looking at the tissue of the forearms. Primarily on the top part, we'll probably have a little bit more roll on the elbow. So usually anytime your wrist deals with flexion, is it's going to have more response to that elbow. So, just a basic wrist stretch where you're pulling that out of flexion will have an effect on that elbow. The triceps is probably the main culprit of direct elbow pain. So I would assume your triceps is really, really tight because it's taken most of the mechanical load since your shoulder is poo poo. So getting into your triceps is another thing that you can focus on. And then the last thing, if you have the availability, is the floss. So a Voodoo floss band, you can get them on Amazon cheaply for like 10 to 15 bucks. Wrapping your elbow with Voodoo floss bands and taking it through full range of motion, unloaded, just standing up, and then actually getting to push up positions, those deep positions, exploring and getting that elbow used to moving at a full range of motion with some tension can desensitize the brain because you have all this compression on the elbow, works wonders. So you have a whole lot of stuff that I just said.
Do you
Find
think
out
a
what the
voodoo?
culprit.
I'm being selfish now. Do you think a voodoo floss band would be good for my elbow situation?
I would be doing it every day.
All right, I'm ordering one right now.
Order one right now so that when I get out there, I show you. You need to
All right.
order the red one, not the black one.
Okay, I got this is like a
Yeah.
set.
Yeah,
Cool.
for all of you guys out there, get the red ones. Don't get the black ones. One, back at the 2-3, I standard issued most of the PJs with two red bands when they deployed. So I bought hundreds of them. Those PJs would use those for like when guys rolled their ankles, they were great. They used it for all kinds of situations and scenarios. We used them for like crossover symmetry bands for band pull aparts. We could use them as PVC pipes, but the red
Yeah,
ones are way more durable.
I just ordered them. They're on their way.
Done.
And
Done.
then Gabe, I'm going to come back to your question real quick. Joe asked, "What does doing trigger point training do to fix the issue? It worked for me, just don't understand how."
Okay. When you have a muscle action or a muscle contraction, there's electronic information going from your brain to the area that's being contracted. So just think of a hose, a garden hose of electronic information. When a muscle spasm happens or just there's so much tension in your situation, it can cause that electronic signal to get buffered or derailed. So you may think, I need to activate my posterior shoulder. So you do all these, I just call them baseball drills, all these shoulder PT exercises, but the signal is still blunted. So all of your work is just, it's not optimal. So what you need to do is restore the signal or clear up that highway. So what you're doing is you're increasing your tissue quality, but you're also increasing um, the rate of speed in which you can make a contraction, and you're also increasing the motor unit recruitment of that area. Usually, blood, the amount of blood that can flow through an area and through the fascia where all the electronic information is being distributed onto the tissue is what we see. So you guys have might have watched in the Olympics back when Michael Phelps did his last one. I don't know what year that was, 16 or I don't know. And the cupping was like the big new craze. If you ever do some cupping, your skin will turn purple into a circle. There could be some areas where you don't see any purple and it just stays white, the color of your skin. If that happens, that area is damaged because we can't get blood to it. So that tissue quality area, usually back at the 2-3 when we would do it and we'd see a white area, we'd be like, oh, that's the spot because it just can't, it's just so wound up. The fascia is unresponsive. And that's usually the weak area on the individual that's causing all these downstream injuries.
Hmm,
So yeah,
interesting.
trigger pointing is huge, man. It's
Yeah.
huge.
I mean, when you came out and started doing that for me, it's been a game changer. All right, Gabe asked, for running, is there other breathing ratios to use? I was breathing 3-2 ratio, 3 steps in, 2 steps out. Felt a lot harder to breathe as opposed to just not thinking. I was running zone 2, so I'm curious if that may be affecting it. My first question would be, how long did you try it for? Because anytime we change something that's not natural to how we've been doing something for a period of time, it's going to come with a higher level of difficulty right off the bat. If we're changing our gait, if we're changing our breathing, if we're changing, the way we move or run or ruck or anything like that, there's going to be that initial resistance or difficulty associated with learning a new skill. Breathing while you're running is a skill. So I would treat it as such. You can do a 3 to 3, you can do a 3 to 2. Um, I, uh, any like, and it depends on the individual. I like to just base it off of when my left foot hits the ground. So I breathe in for 2 paces when my left foot hits the ground when I'm doing like speed work or anything like that. Maybe 3 when I'm doing some zone 2 work, and then I let it out, not like super fast or super slow, just kind of naturally in between those paces. But I would say work with different pacing, and there's not like a rule that you have to follow. The goal is just to get your breathing under control, and I would say give it enough time to actually get past that initial learning period of the new skill. Second question, for running, is it okay to almost squat down when you run? I was always told to stand up and lean forward more, but I notice if I almost do a very small squat, it makes it way easier to run. I would have to see what you mean to give you feedback on that. Typically, what we want to do is we want to have our shoulders and hips in line, standing nice and tall through our head, and we are leaning forward from the ankles and essentially falling into those steps, and we're driving our knee with each one of those steps. So in most cases, and I would have to see your specific running form with that. So you can shoot me a video inside the app and I'll take a look at it. But in most cases, when we kind of squat down, we tend to make the distance up by reaching our foot out in front, which has that higher level of impact and can create some overuse injuries when you really start extending out those distances. So it might feel good, might feel more natural for a 400, 800-meter run or something like that. But it might be a little bit more challenging to sustain over that distance. Again, shoot me a video of what you're doing, and we can kind of break it down. When I was powerlifting, I would get elbow pain during heavy bench presses, and I added in more tricep work as warm up for bench, and it seemed to help a lot. Solid. All right, last question, guys. Thoughts on SOCOM athlete events? There's one in a few weeks in Atlanta, and I was thinking about attending. Tyler and I were actually talking about the SOCOM athlete events immediately before we got on the call. They're solid. They do the hell day. They get you out there. They have you do a PT test, and then they'll do kind of like some smoke session style stuff. And it can be a really good opportunity to, one, put yourself in an environment where you're meeting like-minded people, which can do a lot for your mindset. You really come out of those environments with solid feedback and feeling like you have a lot of motivation, which is fantastic. And two, it kind of shows you where you stack up against other individuals going into that pipeline. So I say I like them. Obviously, it's going to come with a lot of stress. So I would have such like a mini taper going into it. So we're not just going in crushed from a heavy training week and then trying to crush ourselves in that hell day. But it's not going to be so overbearing that it's, going to throw things off. So I would say if you have the opportunity to do it, do it. With that, one of the things that guys always often experience, usually over the holidays, is they start feeling kind of lonely in their endeavor, right? They're in this environment where maybe they have some coworkers, maybe they have some friends, and they're separating themselves from that group by chasing this goal that is very unique to their current environment. So it takes a while in that kind of lonely period before you start getting in the pipeline and meeting other individuals that are pursuing something like that. So things like the SOCOM athletes event, things like the group chat that we have in here are fantastic ways to connect with people that are going through the same things that you are and can help obviously stay positive and continue working through that process. Other than that, guys, that's all we got for tonight. Let's finish up the week strong. If you guys have anything that we need or you need help with on our end, please not hesitate to reach out. Other than that, appreciate you joining in, and we will talk to you very soon.